The chamber was built to make visitors feel small. It worked. Ambassador Elena Vance sat in humanity's designated seat, the newest addition to the Galactic Council, shoved into a corner where the lighting was worst and the acoustics made every human statement sound thin. 12 elder species filled the circular hall. Their representatives occupied platforms that floated at varying heights, a physical reminder of galactic hierarchy. Humanity's platform hovered lowest of all. She had been here for 6 hours. 6 hours of listening to species who had conquered stars before Earth developed fire, debate the fate of human colonies like they were discussing pest control. The Velthari Dominion's High Adjudicator rose from his platform. His name was Torvis. He had 4 arms, skin like burnished copper, and eyes that held the particular contempt of someone who had never once doubted his own superiority. The Council must address the human expansion problem, Torvis announced. His translator rendered the words in flat English, but the tone needed no translation. Their colonies spread like infection into territories they cannot defend. Vance kept her expression neutral. She had learned that skill in her first month here. Show nothing. Give them nothing. I present evidence of human military inadequacy. Torvis gestured, and a holographic display filled the chamber's center. Ship schematics, sensor logs, fleet compositions, all of it supposedly showing Earth's naval forces. The ships looked ancient, radiation shielding that leaked, engines that burned dirty, weapon systems 2 generations out of date. This, Torvis said with theatrical disgust, is their flagship. The UES Prometheus. The image rotated slowly, a boxy, ungainly vessel covered in what looked like rust. Laughter rippled through the chamber. The Kreth representative made a sound like gravel in a blender, their version of amusement. The Molathon delegates' tentacles curled in patterns that meant mockery. They named their warship after a god who was punished, Torvis continued. How fitting for a species that reaches beyond its station. More laughter. Vance waited for silence. Then she spoke. The Prometheus was decommissioned 3 years ago. Torvis waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. Replaced by something even more primitive, no doubt. The point stands. Humanity cannot protect its territories. The Council should authorize protective redistribution of human colonies to species capable of defending them. Protective redistribution. Vance had learned to translate Council language. It meant ethnic cleansing with better vocabulary. The Velthari Dominion generously offers to assume control of the 3 human colony worlds in the Cascadia sector, Torvis said. For their own protection, of course. Of course. The vote was quick. 11 species in favor of Velthari protection of human colonies. 1 opposed. Vance cast humanity's lone dissenting vote, knowing it would change nothing. The Council had made its decision before she ever walked into the chamber. This performance was simply courtesy, the polite fiction that humans had a voice that mattered. She gathered her materials and stood. Ambassador Vance, the Council speaker intoned, "Do you wish to make a statement for the record?" She considered it. 6 hours of insults. 50 years of humanity clawing for respect in a galaxy that saw them as children playing with matches. 3 colony worlds about to be swallowed. No statement, she said. She walked out alone. Her footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. When she was certain no one could see her face, she allowed herself a small smile. The particular smile of someone holding cards nobody knew existed. She touched her earpiece. 1 tap. Nothing more. 12,000 light-years away, in a region of space that officially contained nothing but dead stars and cosmic dust, a ship that did not exist, drifted through Velthari-controlled territory. The UES Revenant was 2 kilometers of angles and silence. Her hull absorbed light, rather than reflecting it. Her engines produced no heat signature. Her mass was distributed through classified technology that made her invisible to every sensor system the galaxy had ever developed. She was not the only ship of her kind. She was simply the one currently positioned to matter. Captain Marcus Cole stood on a bridge that hummed with quiet activity. 40 crew members, the best Earth had. Each one selected for a posting that would never appear on any record, aboard a vessel that would never be acknowledged, running missions that officially never happened. Cole was 53 years old. He had gray at his temples and lines around his eyes that came from decades of decisions that cost people their lives. He wore no medals, because the operations that earned them were classified beyond classification. He was, officially, a civilian contractor who worked in agricultural logistics. His XO, Commander Sarah Webb, stood beside him. They watched the Council broadcast on a screen that shouldn't have been able to receive the signal, but humanity had learned to build receivers that could catch whispers across star systems. "They're laughing at us," Webb observed. Cole watched Torvis present his evidence, watched the chamber mock humanity's ships, watched Vance sit through it with a face like stone. "They're laughing at the Prometheus," Cole said. "The Prometheus was a prop. Still, hard to watch." "Is it?" Webb looked at him. Cole's expression hadn't changed throughout the entire broadcast. He might have been watching weather reports. "They just voted to take 3 of our colony worlds, Captain. They voted to try." On screen, Vance touched her earpiece. One tap. Cole's console chimed softly. A single encrypted burst. 4 words. "Deterrent protocol authorized. Execute." He read it once. Then he opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, this is the captain. The Council has voted to authorize military action against human colonies in the Cascadia sector. The Velthari Dominion will be deploying a fleet to enforce that vote." He paused. "Our mission parameters have just changed. We are no longer observing. We are no longer hiding. When that fleet arrives at Cascadia, we will be there to greet them." He closed the channel. Webb exhaled slowly. 50 years. 50 years. 50 years of letting them laugh, building in secret, watching them dismiss us as primitives. Yes. And now? Cole looked at the frozen image on his screen. Torvis, mid-laugh, forearms spread wide in theatrical contempt. Now they learn why we let them laugh. The Revenant altered course, silent, invisible, a ghost, moving through the dark, between stars. Behind them, in council chambers across the galaxy, species who had spent half a century cataloging human weaknesses continued their comfortable routines. They attended their ceremonies, made their plans, drew their maps of territory they assumed was theirs to take. None of them looked at the empty spaces between stars. None of them wondered what might be hiding there. Fleet Commander Zorath stood on the bridge of the Divine Mandate and watched his armada stretch across the stars. 200 warships, heavy cruisers, destroyers, carriers loaded with fighter craft. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust and boil its oceans. Against this, the humans had 7 patrol frigates defending the Cascadia colonies. 7. Zorath allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This would not be a battle. It would be a demonstration, a lesson to humanity and every other young species watching. The galaxy belonged to those with the strength to hold it. Humans had neither strength nor the wisdom to accept their place. His officers had set up a celebration in the forward lounge. Wine from the Velthari homeworld, delicacies from conquered territories, music and laughter that drifted through the ship's corridors. Zorath did not join them. Victory parties before victory was achieved struck him as foolish. But he understood the crew's confidence. He shared it. The journey to Cascadia would take 4 days at fleet speed. 4 days of quiet transit through space the Velthari had controlled for centuries. The first anomaly appeared on day 2. "Commander," the sensor officer's voice carried a note of confusion. "I'm reading a mass displacement at bearing 47 Mark II. Zorath turned from his contemplation of the stars. "Identify." "That's the problem, sir. I can't. There's definitely something there. The gravitational signature is clear. But visual shows empty space. No thermal reading, no electromagnetic emissions, nothing. Debris, a rogue asteroid. With this precise a gravitational shadow, the officer hesitated. It would have to be incredibly dense, and moving at exactly our speed. Zorath felt something cold touch the base of his spine. He ignored it. "Continue monitoring. It's space dust. Nothing more." 3 hours later, the navigational officer requested an audience. "Sir, I found something strange." She pulled up a star chart. "The route beacons in this sector have been adjusted." "Adjusted how?" "Repositioned. By millimeters. Not enough to matter for any individual ship, but enough that our automated pathfinding is taking us on a slightly longer route. We're adding nearly 6 hours to our transit time." "Equipment malfunction?" "All 17 beacons in the sector, sir. Each one adjusted by a different amount, but all producing the same result." The cold feeling spread upward along Zorath's spine. "Humans don't have ships in this region," he said. "We would have detected them." "Yes, sir, we would have." She left the statement hanging. Zorath ordered increased sensor sweeps. Every 15 minutes his crews scanned every frequency they could generate. They found nothing, except empty space and distant stars. That night, a supply ship at the rear of the convoy reported something impossible. The crew had noticed a cold spot on their hull. External temperature monitors showed a localized drop of 40 degrees in a patch roughly 2 meters across. No explanation, no damage, just cold. When they sent a maintenance drone to examine it, they found condensation on the hull, frozen moisture that had formed in the shape of a handprint. The handprint had 6 fingers. Velthari had 6 fingers. Zorath read the report 3 times. Then he ordered it classified, and the supply ship crew transferred to quarters where they couldn't spread rumors. Someone was playing games with his fleet. Human games. Human tricks, designed to frighten primitive minds. He would not be frightened. Day 3 brought a message. It arrived on a narrow beam transmission, aimed directly at the Divine Mandate's communication array. The origin point was impossible, inside the Velthari formation, from a location where sensors showed absolutely nothing. 2 words, transmitted in the Velthari language. "Turn back." Zorath stared at the message until his eyes ached. Then he ordered a full sweep of the area surrounding the origin point. Nothing. Empty vacuum, stars and silence. He ordered a shuttle to make a visual pass through that exact location. The pilot, a veteran of 30 years, flew the route 3 times before making his report. "Sir, the pilot's voice was wrong, shaky in a way combat veterans did not get. "On my second pass, I saw something, a reflection, my own shuttle, reflected back at me, but there was nothing there to reflect off, like flying past a mirror that didn't exist." "You imagined it?" "Yes, sir, I imagined it." The pilot paused. "Permission to be reassigned to rear guard duty, sir. I don't want to fly point anymore." The cold had reached Zorath's chest now. It sat there like a stone. He faced a choice. Report the anomalies to High Command and be laughed at, the great fleet commander jumping at shadows and human tricks. Or press forward and prove there was nothing to fear. Pride won. Pride always won with Zorath. It was his greatest strength and would become his defining weakness. "All ships, increase speed," he ordered. "We arrive at Cascadia in 36 hours. The fleet accelerated. Behind them, keeping perfect pace, something that wasn't there adjusted its course to match. On the bridge of the Revenant, Captain Cole watched the Velthari formation tighten up, watched their speed increase, watch them commit fully to their course. He had given them every chance. The handprint, the message, the reflection. Warnings a wise commander would have heeded. Zorath was not a wise commander. "They're not turning back," Webb reported. "No," Cole replied. "Pity." Cole opened a ship-wide channel. His voice was flat, calm in a way that was somehow worse than anger. "All hands, they're not turning back. You know what that means." Throughout the Revenant, crew members moved to battle stations, not with urgency, with something slower, something patient that had been waiting a very long time. "Weapons," Cole said. "Begin final checks. All systems green, Captain. Helm, match their course. Keep us within strike range." "Matching course. We'll arrive at Cascadia 12 minutes before they do." Cole nodded. He looked at the tactical display, where 200 Velthari warships flew toward 3 colonies full of human civilians. "Then we'll be there to welcome them." The Revenant slid through space like a shark through dark water. Patient. Silent. New Cascadia was a world of blue oceans and green forests. 12 million humans called it home. They had built cities in the valleys and farms on the plains and lives that mattered. Now, they watched the sky and waited to see if those lives would continue. Captain Rachel Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant and counted ships. 7 frigates, her command. All that stood between the colony and 200 Velthari warships that had just appeared at the system's edge. 7 against 200. She had done the math. The math was bad, but math had never stopped humans before. "All ships," she broadcast. "Form defensive line. Position between the planet and incoming fleet." 6 confirmations came back. 6 captains who knew what she knew. 6 captains who weren't running. The Defiant moved to the center of the line. Chen's wife, Maria, was down there on the surface. She worked at the hospital in Port Haven. She was probably helping evacuate patients to the underground shelters right now. Probably telling people it would be okay. It wouldn't be okay. Chen knew that. Maria probably knew it too. 7 frigates couldn't stop 200 warships, but they could make the Velthari earn their victory. The Velthari fleet decelerated into attack formation, precise, professional, overwhelming. Their flagship, the Divine Mandate, took position at the center, like a king on a chessboard. Chen opened a channel. "Velthari fleet, this is Captain Rachel Chen of the United Earthship Defiant. You are approaching human territory with hostile intent. Reverse course immediately." The response came from Fleet Commander Zorath himself. His voice dripped with amusement. "Captain Chen, your bravery is noted and will be recorded in the histories we write after your species learns its place. Stand aside. Surrender your vessels and your colony for protective relocation. Resistance will result in orbital bombardment." "Negative," Chen said. "New Cascadia is human soil. These people are under our protection." "Your protection?" Zorath laughed. "You have 7 ships. I have 200. This is not protection. This is theater." "Maybe, but it's our theater, and we're not leaving the stage." Silence from Zorath. "Then, you have 10 minutes to reconsider. After that, we begin enforcement operations." The channel closed. Chen looked at her tactical display. 10 minutes, 600 seconds to live. She thought about Maria, about the house they'd built together, about the garden Maria tended with such care, growing tomatoes that never quite ripened properly in Cascadia's weak sunlight. Someone who would stay. The minutes crawled past. 12,000 kilometers away, invisible against the stars, Captain Marcus Cole watched the countdown from the Revenant's bridge. 7 frigates, Webb said softly. "They're not running." "No." "Our orders." "I know our orders." Cole's voice was tight. "We observe, we remain hidden unless they attempt planetary bombardment. We do not engage conventional naval forces." Those are our people, Captain. I know. 8 minutes left. The Velthari fleet began repositioning. Attack vectors. Targeting solutions. 200 predators circling 7 pieces of prey. 7 minutes. Webb said nothing else. She watched Cole. Watched his hands grip the armrests of his command chair. 6 minutes. Captain Chen is holding position, the tactical officer reported. She's not even trying evasive maneuvers. She knows she can't win. Standing there. 5 minutes. Cole closed his eyes. 50 years. 50 years of humanity hiding its strength, waiting, enduring the contempt, building ships like the Revenant in secret facilities on moons that didn't appear on any map. Entire careers spent in shadows. Families never formed. Lives sacrificed for this moment. And what was this moment? Watching 7 brave captains die while he did nothing. 4 minutes. Warning shots. Zorath's voice crackled across open channels. Disable the lead human frigate. A Velthari cruiser fired. The beam crossed the void in an eye blink and struck the UES horizon. The frigate shuddered. Atmosphere vented from a wound in its hull. Its engines flickered and died. The horizon began to drift. Chen's voice came across the channel, ragged but clear. All ships, hold the line. Defiant moving to cover horizon. The Defiant slid forward, putting itself between the crippled frigate and the Velthari weapons. 3 minutes. Sir, the Revenant's weapons officer said. 1 shot. I can end this with 1 shot. Just give me the order. Cole's eyes were still closed. 2 minutes. They're going to kill her, Webb said. Chen, the Horizon crew, all of them. They're going to kill them while we watch. 1 minute. Cole opened his eyes. On the tactical display, Zorath's flagship powered up its main weapons. The Divine Mandate's forward batteries glowed with accumulated charge. Fleet Commander, Zorath broadcast. Destroy the crippled vessel. Complete kill. No survivors. Let their destruction serve as an example. 30 seconds. The weapons officer aboard the Divine Mandate hesitated. Sir, the vessel is disabled. There are wounded aboard. Under galactic convention, I gave an order. 20 seconds. The hesitation stretched. 3 seconds of a Velthari officer wrestling with his conscience. Cole made his decision. Decloak on my mark. 10 seconds. The Divine Mandate fired. A killing beam, powerful enough to vaporize a frigate. Now. The beam never reached the horizon. Something appeared between the Velthari fleet and the human frigates. Something huge. Something that swallowed the killing beam like a man swallowing a single drop of water. For 1 frame of visual recording, a shape was visible. 2 kilometers of sharp angles and impossible darkness. Then, it was gone again. But everyone had seen it. On the Divine Mandate, Zorath gripped his command chair so hard, his claws left marks in the metal. What, he whispered, was that? Nobody answered. Nobody could. Aboard the Defiant, Captain Shen stared at the space where something had been and wasn't anymore. Defiant to unknown vessel, she broadcast. Identify yourself. Silence. Then, on a frequency that shouldn't have been possible, a human voice. Defiant, this is Revenant. Glad we could make it to the party. How about you take your people and pull back? We'll handle things from here. Chen's hands were shaking. Revenant confirmed. Defiant withdrawing. Her frigates began to move toward the planet they'd been prepared to die defending. In the space between them and the enemy, something invisible waited. The last kindness had been offered. The Velthari hadn't taken it. Now came the reckoning. Cole gave the order. Decloak. Full reveal. Let them see everything. The UES Revenant stopped being a ghost. She emerged from nothing, like a monster rising from the deepest ocean. 2 kilometers of angular death, surfaces that drank light instead of reflecting it. weapon batteries that lined her hull like teeth in the mouth of something ancient and hungry. She was everything humanity had built in 50 years of secret fear and quiet determination. Every black budget, every hidden facility, every engineer who died in accidents that weren't accidents, and was buried in graves that held empty coffins. The Velthari sensors screamed. Every ship in the fleet registered the same impossibility. Mass readings that said a Dreadnought-class vessel had appeared from empty vacuum. Weapon signatures that matched nothing in any database. Hull composition that their analysis computers couldn't identify. The Divine Mandate's tactical officer made a sound no Velthari had made in centuries of spacefaring dominance. He vomited. Fleet Commander Zoroth stood frozen at his command station. His mind struggled to process what his eyes were showing him. "That's not possible," he said. "Cloaking technology at that scale doesn't exist. Our scientists proved it can't work on anything larger than a shuttle." "Apparently," his executive officer said slowly, "the humans didn't read our research papers." Cole opened a channel, wide beam, all frequencies, every ship in the Velthari fleet, every sensor platform in the sector, every relay station within range. The entire galaxy was about to hear this. "This is Captain Marcus Cole of the United Earthship Revenant." His voice was calm, the calm of someone who had waited decades for this moment. "Registration number?" A pause. 715-3042-Alpha. Another pause. Then, the calm voice. "What do you think of that?" Fleet Commander Zoroth's stomach tightened. They were no longer in control. The smallest hint of a smile. "Ask nicely." He continued. "You are currently targeting human civilians. You have fired on human military vessels. Under the Terran Articles of Defense, this constitutes an act of war." Another pause. Longer this time. "We accept." Zoroth found his voice. "One ship. You reveal one ship and think that changes anything? We have 200. The Revenant fired. A single shot from a weapon the Velthari had never seen. It crossed the void faster than light itself, and struck a heavy cruiser on the Divine Mandate's flank. The cruiser did not explode. It came apart, sliced perfectly in half by something that cut through shields and armor like they were made of paper. The two halves drifted away from each other, trailing atmosphere and debris and bodies, dead in a single shot. "You were saying?" Cole asked. "Something about 200 ships?" The Velthari fleet opened fire. Every ship, every weapon, beams and missiles and kinetic rounds, a storm of destruction that would have shattered a moon. The Revenant disappeared. The attack hit empty space. She reappeared 3 seconds later behind the Velthari formation. Point defense systems caught and destroyed 6 missiles that had been tracking her previous position. Her secondary batteries reached out and touched 2 destroyers. They died without knowing what hit them. Gone again. Appearing at the fleet's starboard flank. Gone. Port side. Gone. Dead center of the formation. So close to the Divine Mandate that Zoroth could have looked out his viewport and touched her hull. "Every time I move," Cole broadcast, "I could be anywhere. I could be everywhere. You cannot run. You cannot hide. You cannot fight something you cannot find." The Revenant hung there for 5 eternal seconds. Then she slid away and cloaked once more. Across the galaxy, beings watched. The Galactic Council's emergency session had convened within minutes of the first transmission. Representatives who had laughed at humanity 3 days ago now sat in horrified silence as tactical displays showed them the impossible. The Kreth Hegemony's ambassador quietly summoned her aides and began dictating recall orders for all military vessels near human space. The Molathon Syndicate's delegate was already calculating new trade agreements. Better terms, much better terms. The Yendari High Council, watching from their homeworld, deleted the battle plans they had prepared for minor territorial adjustments in human mining sectors. Deleted them thoroughly. Erased every backup. In 100 war rooms on 100 worlds, military planners opened new files, started new assessments, invented new vocabulary for threats they hadn't known existed until today. The Velthari fleet was breaking, not from damage. The Revenant had killed 3 ships, 3 out of 200. But she had proven something worse than the ability to destroy. She had proven that they couldn't touch her. Ships scattered. Captains abandoned formation without orders. Some made for the system's edge and FTL distance. Others simply fled in random directions, desperate to be anywhere else. "Fall back," Zorath screamed. "All ships fall back. Full retreat." The fleet obeyed. 200 ships becoming a cloud of panicked insects, each one trying to be the first to escape. The Revenant let them run. All except one. The Divine Mandate's engines flared to maximum. Zorath's flagship surged toward the system's edge, toward escape, toward safety. The Revenant matched velocity, stayed exactly 1 kilometer off the flagship's stern. Visible on sensors, visible on viewports. Unhurried, patient. "You're not leaving," Cole's voice came through. "Not yet." Zorath ordered more speed. The Divine Mandate gave him everything she had. The Revenant stayed on his tail like she wasn't even trying. "Where are you going, Fleet Commander? Back to tell your government what happened here? Back to explain how 200 warships ran from one?" "What do you want?" Zorath demanded. "I want you to understand something." Cole's voice hadn't changed. Still calm, still patient. "For 50 years your species laughed at us, called us primitives, divided up our territory like we weren't even in the room. And we let you. We let you because we weren't ready. Because we were still building, still learning, still hiding." The Revenant closed to 500 meters. Close enough that Zorath could see her weapon ports, each one large enough to swallow his flagship whole. "We're not hiding anymore." The Divine Mandate's engines died. Not from damage. The Revenant hadn't fired. But somehow, something had reached into Zorath's ship and simply turned things off. His flagship drifted, dead in space. And the Revenant paced her, circling slowly, like a shark, around a wounded swimmer. "Prepare to be boarded," Cole said. "We have terms to discuss." In the council chamber on Nexus Prime, the Velthari High Adjudicator watched his people's flagship become a trophy. He said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The galaxy had just learned a new word. The humans called it deterrent. Everyone else was learning to call it fear. Fleet Commander Zorath sat alone on the bridge of his dead ship. His crew had fled to the escape pods hours ago. He had given them permission. There was no shame in retreating from something you couldn't fight. He understood that now. He remained because he was the commander, because this was his flagship, because running would not undo what had happened here. The human ship still circled outside, patient, endless, a predator that had already won and was simply waiting for its prey to acknowledge the fact. Zorath had spent 30 years building his career. He had commanded fleets that conquered star systems. He had stood before the Velthari High Council and received medals for victories that expanded the Dominion's borders by light years. None of it mattered now. He heard them before he saw them, footsteps on metal. Human footsteps, moving through corridors designed for species with different legs. The bridge door opened. 4 soldiers entered first. They wore armor that looked like shadow given form, carrying weapons that hummed with contained violence. They swept the room with professional efficiency, and then took positions by the door. Then came their captain. Marcus Cole was not what Zorath had expected. The human was average height, average build, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of years and hard choices. He wore a uniform without decoration, no medals, No rank insignia beyond a simple bar on his collar. He looked like someone's grandfather. He looked like the most dangerous being Zorath had ever met. Fleet Commander. Cole's voice was the same as it had been on the broadcast. Calm, patient. I'm told you didn't run with your crew. My place is here. That's not common these days. Captains going down with their ships. Cole walked to the viewport. Outside, the Revenant hung in space, her massive form blocking the stars. I respect it. What do you want? Cole turned. He held a datapad in one hand. He set it on the navigation console between them. You're going to deliver this to your government, Cole said. A treaty. The terms are straightforward. Immediate withdrawal from all human territories. Reparations for the colonies you attacked. A formal council acknowledgement that humanity possesses military parity with the elder species. Zorath looked at the datapad without touching it. And if we refuse? You won't. You seem certain. I am. Cole clasped his hands behind his back. Because you're going to tell your government what happened here. You're going to explain that your fleet, 200 of your finest warships, ran from a single human vessel. And you're going to tell them that we let you run. We could have killed every ship. We chose not to. Mercy? Demonstration. Cole's eyes were hard. We don't want war, Fleet Commander. War is expensive and messy, and people on both sides die for reasons they don't understand. What we want is to be left alone, to build our colonies, to raise our families, to exist without the rest of the galaxy treating us like children who wandered into traffic. He stepped closer. Your government will sign this treaty, because the alternative is finding out how many ships like the Revenant we have. And I promise you, they don't want to know the answer. Zorath asked the question that had been burning in his mind since the moment of first contact. How many ships like this do you have? Cole smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Ask nicely. He turned and walked toward the door. His soldiers fell in behind him. At the threshold, he paused. We'll release your ship once you've entered FTL. Safe journey, Fleet Commander. I hope we don't have to meet again. Then, he was gone. 3 days later, Ambassador Elena Vance returned to the Galactic Council chamber. Same seat, same corner, same terrible acoustics. But everything was different now. The Velthari High Adjudicator's platform was empty. He had been recalled in disgrace. His replacement, a younger Velthari with nervous eyes, sat 3 levels lower than Torvis had occupied. The Kreth representative avoided Vance's gaze entirely. The Molathon delegate's tentacles were held in patterns that meant extreme politeness. Even the council speaker, who had overseen 50 years of dismissing human concerns, now looked at her with something new in his ancient eyes. Caution. Vance took her seat. She arranged her materials. She waited. The session proceeded. Border disputes, trade agreements, the usual business of galactic governance. Then came the territorial discussion. The council speaker read from the agenda. Next matter, status of human colonies in the Orion Arm sector. Several species have filed claims. He trailed off. Vance looked up, met his eyes, said nothing. The speaker cleared his throat. On reflection, the council has determined that human colonies in the Orion Arm sector are not subject to territorial dispute at this time. Or any time, Vance said quietly. Or any time, the speaker agreed. So recorded. The session moved on. Vance allowed herself a small smile. Deep in the void between stars, the Revenant returned to silence. Cole filed his after-action report from his quarters. The words came easily. He had written reports like this before. Reports that would never be read by anyone without the highest clearance, describing events that officially never happened. Deterrent demonstrated. Enemy fleet neutralized with 0 human casualties. Recommend continued deployment of Spectre-class vessels at galactic flashpoints. They don't need to see us to know we're there. That's the point. He signed it, encrypted it, sent it to an address that existed only in classified databases. Then he went to the observation deck. Webb was already there. She stood by the viewport, watching the stars drift past. "The reports are coming in," she said. "The Kreth have withdrawn their border patrols from human space. The Molathon are offering new trade terms, good terms. The Yendari cancelled something they were planning. We don't know what, but their intelligence services are apparently in chaos. Good. The Council ratified the Velthari Treaty, unanimous, including the Velthari. Also good." Webb turned to look at him. "We scared them, really scared them. That was the idea." "I know." She paused. "Is that what we want it to be? The thing that scares the galaxy into leaving us alone?" Cole considered the question. It was a fair one. "We wanted to survive," he said finally. "Survival sometimes requires becoming something you didn't plan to be." He looked at the stars. "Maybe someday we won't need ships like this. Maybe someday the galaxy will accept us as equals without having to be reminded that the alternative is worse. But today isn't that day." Webb nodded slowly. "What now?" "Now we go back to being ghosts. Watch, wait, hope nobody else needs a reminder." He moved toward the door. "Get some rest, Commander. We deploy to the Kreth border in 6 hours. Another potential flashpoint? I intend to make sure they stay that way." He left her there with the stars. The Revenant slid through the darkness, invisible once more. A ghost ship crewed by ghosts, serving a species that had learned the oldest lesson in the galaxy. Peace was not given. It was not earned. It was not won in council chambers with pretty words. Peace was built in secret, hammered in fear, and maintained by the things that watched from shadows. Humanity had been mocked, dismissed, laughed at. They weren't laughing anymore. On a dozen worlds, in 100 languages, new words entered the vocabulary, new categories of threat, new entries in databases that tracked species capable of genuine harm. In the human military lexicon, there was already a word for what had happened at New Cascadia. They had used it in Cole's original mission briefing, long before a single shot was fired. Introduction. The galaxy had just met the real humanity, and humanity was just getting started.